Hey everyone. You know, I'm 46 years old, and for the entirety of my adult life, I've always known it was something that was talked about, and it's usually talked about as it was a proud thing that Canada and the U.S. has the longest undefended border on the planet, in the world, right? And the reason why that was something to be praised and acknowledged and accepted was because we come from predominantly, like Canada, like the North American, the people that run the government, basically, even though they had somewhat different philosophies and pretenses in how to run societies, but predominantly the leaders in both of the countries, like U.S. and Canada, came from old world Europe, right? So the British, the French, and you know the whole thing, right? So they were at least somewhat aligned, and because a lot of them came from back in the day when, like, in the 19th century, right after the Enlightenment era, they still had that genuine concept. Now, Canadians chose to become more loyal to the Queen, right, to the monarchy. U.S., especially the Southern U.S., were totally rebellious. They didn't want nothing to do with old world monarchies or the kings and queens of old world Europe. They wanted to set up their own system. I actually think they did a much better job in laying out the platform, the premise, and the philosophy of their society, the U.S. society, or the country of U.S., right? Whereas Canadians were like trying to play that middle ground. But either way, no matter what, the whole point was kind of, it was the pretense of, yeah, but we're still kind of from basically they have the same background, same family, right? So, and we have the same mentality, somewhat closely aligned ideologies and preferences as far as things. So, yeah, we had a great undefended border because, like I said, not me, but the people at the time, at least, were aligned as far as defending borders from foreigners or external influences or actors or now they call them terrorists, people that want to come and take over this country and change it from within, right? Or take advantage of the systems. But of course, back in the old days, there was no systems of welfare. There was no welfare system. So the people that chose to come to Canada, the U.S., they were doing it willingly. Well, they had no choice. If you were coming to Canada, the U.S. back in the day, right, in the 19th, 20th century, then you knew that, well, yeah, you could come here, sure, but nobody was giving you no free ride. All they did was said, "Here, okay, here you go. You can live here, but you got to take care of yourself. You got to defend your own shit. You got to provide for your own family." So the people that chose here to come here under that known circumstance or realization, think about the mindset of the people that would still choose to come here under those circumstances, right? Pretty self-reliant, self-sufficient because they realize there's no safety net, right? Especially in new North America when there wasn't a big, long, established, entrenched governmental system, right? Fast forward to 2017. Now, with 70 years later now, we're in 70 years now since the rampant growth of the welfare state, right? Forced wealth redistribution. Now we're seeing where policies have diverged completely. The American people, like I said, they're always way ahead of Canadians, unfortunately, and it's a terrible thing, but for the most part, they're always well ahead of us in many aspects, in many different areas. And they voted in Donald Trump, whether you like him or not. But the main thing was one of the biggest thing was trade agreements and this mass influx of immigrants from foreign countries that are soaking up resources, right? Whether they're going on welfare or using wealth redistribution as a means to an end or to provide for themselves and their family, or right to come from these other countries and be able to compete in Canada, the U.S. for the shrinking job pool or the housing market. The problem is now with all the central planning involved is now people have to actually concern themselves with this stuff. I wish we didn't. I mean, I'm actually the kind of people like myself, just like the founding fathers of the U.S. and, strict constitutionalists in the U.S. or stuff. Immigration, and everyone will say, yeah, we're the land of immigrants. Same like Canada, predominantly we're a land of immigrants. So the problem is once you create a welfare state, you can have one or you can have the other, but you can't have both. So if you want to be the land of immigrants, that's cool. And for most people, as long as I don't have to pay to subsidize or provide income or be forced, right, to provide income for someone else, then yeah, come on in. Set up shop, do your thing, and that's how humans flourish. But like I say, in the modern era with the wealth redistribution state, the ability to, like I say, take from one to give to the other, we're seeing that societies are breaking down tremendously. And that's just a natural consequence and reaction of, like I say, the current paradigm that we live in. This is in regards to, now, I thought we've already heard enough, though, about how many different ways they were coming across Manitoba, Quebec, Ontario. There are many differences of Canada that's very porous, and they're using to cross these borders illegally. As we're seeing, the government, no one seems to, because the government benefits, right? People in government that don't have no financial skin in the game, whether they benefit or don't necessarily benefit, to them it's like, whatever, they don't give a shit. But for the lowly Canadians that now have to navigate through all this and weed through all this mess, right? Because there's so many other things that play into a Canadian's mindset of whether they want people to come from foreign countries. It's not that they're racist. Canadians are not racist, neither are Americans for the most part. Some are, of course, there are exceptions to the rule. But come on. These countries didn't get to be so, filled with so-called multiculturalism and all these different people from, if it wasn't for the fact that we're very open and we embrace and accept people from many different backgrounds and cultures. The number one thing, the only thing, just like with if you were adopting a child into your family, right? Like I say, shrink it down to the family setting instead of society and government. If you were adopting a child, the number one requirement and prerequisite would be is, I get to raise them, and they're going to have to learn to abide by the rules that I live in, right? And as long as they're sensible, then that only makes sense, right? Now Canadians, Americans, and especially in the UK and today, it's Brexit day, right? Article 50 was triggered today, but it's everyone saying, listen, we have we no longer have any power or control of our own lives and how many people we are forced to provide for or compete with. So yes, let's just put the brakes on. And it's not, like I said, it's not Islamophobic. It's not racist. It's none of that shit that the media propagandists and pundits are putting forth. It's just people trying to take care and respect each other and take care of themselves first and foremost. That's what it comes down to. But here we go again. Now, this is in BC. So it's like, well, it's not just like I say, Quebec and Ontario and Manitoba that's now having the massive influx of these illegal immigrants. Now we got Vancouver. Avenue Zero, how U.S. asylum seekers are finding their way to British Columbia. 291 apprehended by RCMP in 2017's first 2 months. Nonprofit director doesn't think pace will slow. That's the headline. Abdul and his family boarded a flight from New York to Seattle at the end of February and then took a taxi to the Washington border town Blaine. Pushing a stroller with their newborn baby inside on that town's A Street, they crossed an unguarded, unfenced park onto Zero Avenue in Surrey, BC. Then police arrived. We walked around 5 to 7 minutes and then they caught us, said Abdul, whose last name and identity of his family is being withheld out of concern for their safety. They didn't shout at us. They were very humble and very calm officers. Abdul's family have been living in Vancouver since. They're part of 291 asylum seekers apprehended by the RCMP in BC in the first 2 months of 2017. 130 more than Manitoba where refugees have attracted international coverage. So even more, right? And like I said, these are the ones that are just caught. Who knows how many have crossed without being caught? Nobody, that's an unknown at this particular junction, isn't it? So we're seeing how porous the borders, well, we already know how porous they are, and they've been talked about like Swiss cheese, right? But what's the whole pretense, right? What's the whole pretense of a federal government instead of a provincial government? If you live in a province, why was there any pretense of having a foreign or a federal government instead of just, why do I need all these multiple levels of rulers, right? The pretense was, well, the federal government takes care of like foreign invaders and border, right? Federal aspects of the country of Canada. But what we're seeing now is obviously in the Trudeau Liberals, well, they're saying, hey, they're trying to turn their head, they're turning a blind eye and just let them come on in. So all the pretense of even having a federal government where they get to steal large portions of your income to pay to protect you, right? from foreign invaders, foreign aggressors, or foreign people come to your country illegal. Now we're seeing you're being forced to pay for them and provide them with very hefty paychecks and very golden plated pensions and incomes. Well, now they're not even doing their jobs anymore. They're like I say, they're turning their eye, or they're turning their head, they're turning a blind eye to these mass influx of illegal immigrants. So now even the pretense of a federal government and what the point of even having a federal government, that should be open to interpretation up in the air at this stage of the game. What's the pretense? What do you need a federal government for? What do you need a military for, right? What? Well, apparently, let's say at this stage of the game, maybe if a foreign country decided to invade, maybe Trudeau and the Liberals would say, "Hey, come on in. No, don't kill too many of us. Hey, we'll take you to lunch," right? I mean, this is how fucked these. And like I say, he's a self-admitted feminist, so think of the psychology of that, right? Can you think about a man? Like I said, I don't even want to dig into the fact that he's the Prime Minister of Canada that sells identity. I mean, there's a major mental conflict going on in that fucking guy's head. I can tell you that straight out, right? But unfortunately, the rest of us Canadians have to suffer the consequences of his, mental fucking deficiencies. Yeah, I won't finish reading this whole article. I'll share a link to this article in the description of the video below. As per usual, read it. You'll see that everything I'm saying, that well, especially from the first part of it, I'm not lying to you, I'm not bullshitting you. It's all completely truth and factual. And these revelations that keep coming at us, seemingly endlessly now, are showing. I don't know how. Well, they are having a definite effect, because Canadians are now, the majority of Canadians are now very much against this influx of illegal immigrants, or even the legal immigrants are coming in now to the tune of 300,000-400,000 a year. I mean, in a country of a mere 35-36 million, I mean, how long would it take before you're inundated and your social safety nets and the things that you're forced to provide for the people that, live in this country already, like the whole pretense of a social contract, how long does it take when you have an influx of 300,000-400,000 people coming into the country? How long is it going to take before, you run out of other people's money to spend to provide for everyone else, or to compete in this race to the bottom? It's Canadian Libertarian, and I love liberty.